hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes right here on KCTV. We're happy you joined us. My guest today has been a member of the King County District Court bench for over 20 years, the Honorable David Steiner. Your Honor, thank you for being with us today.
It's nice to be here. Thank you.
We appreciate you taking time out to join us today and talk a little bit about your job, but also about one of your passions, which is mountain climbing, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Sure.
A little bit about you, though. You grew up locally, went to the University of Washington for undergraduate. Academically, what were your interests while you were studying at the University of Washington?
When I first started at the University of Washington, well, actually, I had transferred in. So when I first started in my college experience, I wanted to be a journalist. An investigative journalist was my idea. And did that for a little while and decided I didn't really like it that much, not as much as I thought I would. And then went in and did a little career counseling and decided that I would get a history degree.
What was your inspiration to want to get into journalism?
Well, that gets political.
Okay.
That was right after the Watergate investigation.
I've heard of that.
And so Woodward and Bernstein's investigations sort of were exciting for me. And I thought, that's the thing that I want to do. I think I finally decided not everybody gets to be Woodward and Bernstein.
Well, I guess if you stumble across a hot story, you could be potentially, but that doesn't always come along very much. You know, when we all have people in our lives, either that we know or didn't know, that gave us some inspiration or direction in our life, was there someone in your life that really, truly inspired you to reach your goals? Who would that be?
I have a great-grandfather who was owned a bicycle shop at the turn of the century and eventually sold the first car in Washington State.
Is that right? Where at?
In Seattle.
Okay.
He was, his first shop was where the, I'm trying to remember the name of the theater, a famous theater that now has a clothing store inside it. And he sold the first car to a doctor and eventually sold Franklin's. And was an impressive man, led expeditions of early automobile expeditions to Mount Rainier. So that and my parents, seeing the things that my parents had been able to accomplish, gave me more confidence in myself, that I could actually strive for larger things and perhaps accomplish them.
At some point you became interested in the law. Why did you decide that you would go forward and go to law school?
I was, as I indicated, I was sort of struggling to determine what I would do after the failure of the Woodward-Bernstein dream, and was told that I could actually, was asked, what do you like? And I indicated history. And the answer from the person who was interviewing me was, well, you could teach. And I said, I didn't want to teach. What else could you do with a history degree? And he said, you could go to law school.
With a history degree?
With a history degree. And I thought, I can get history, a history degree, which I love, and go to law school, which I had thought about doing before, but had never really thought it was something I could accomplish. So at that point, I made up my mind. It was, I think, probably took me about 5 minutes to decide that's what I would do.
And you went to the University of Puget Sound School of Law.
Correct.
When you entered law school, did you know what area of law that you were interested in, or did that come later?
That came a little bit later. Probably in my second year, I decided that I wanted to be a land use attorney. And I loved the idea of having an effect, being able to have an effect on what we would see around us. Land use is essentially that. And ended up not doing it ultimately. You know, it's interesting that a friend of mine who was a mountain climber, as well as I was, had an idea that he wanted to be a judge. And I wanted to be a land use attorney. Well, it's just the opposite now. He's a very good land use attorney, and I'm the judge.
Isn't life funny that way? After law school, you went into practice. You worked in various areas, both civil and criminal.
Right.
What point in your life, in your legal career, did you decide, I want to be a judge, I want to sit on the bench?
There was a little serendipity involved in that. I had a friend who was a partner in the law firm that I was in, and I had helped her get elected. I doorbelled for her. When I say I helped her get elected, it sounds like I took too much responsibility. I just worked on her campaign. And I got a call probably a year after she was elected asking if I wanted to be a pro tem, which is a temporary judge when someone's ill or on vacation. And I said, sure, that'd be fine. And I had no idea what effect it would have on me. When I actually put on the robe and walked out into court, I had to force myself not to keep smiling.
Why is that?
I just loved it. The idea of being able to sit down, hear everything. Of course, I'd been an attorney for 11 years, or actually it was about 6 years when I first started. And so I had made arguments, had an idea which way the decision should go, and hadn't had the ability to make the decision. And now being able to take in all that I could hear, both the facts and the law, and actually make the decision was a thrilling thing for me. I'd had a strong sense of justice all of my life. I realized that I'm not always going to be right, but the ability to sit down, absorb it all, and make a decision was a wonderful thing.
It sounds like it was a natural transition to go from an advocate to an arbiter, a decision maker, as a judge for you.
I think that it is. It could just be, the personality that you have to have. But I thought it was natural, at least for me.
Do you enjoy the engagement with attorneys, with people in your courtroom that you see every day and hear what they have to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. I tend to be an introvert, but I'm a people person as well. And I do need that interaction every day. I've thought about maybe someday trying to be an appellate court judge. And the worry that I have about that is that you're a little bit more in the background,
right?
And not interacting as much as I do on the court. In the court, I probably see 50 people a day on average. So there's quite a bit of interaction.
And many of them have their own story.
They all have
different
their own
situation,
stories.
and
all of them, absolutely.
Let me switch gears here and talk about another passion in your life, and that is mountain climbing. You've been climbing mountains, I think, since college, your college days. Is that right? How did that passion begin with you? Did anyone inspire you, or is that something that you just decided I'm going to start doing this?
I grew up, of course, in the shadow of Mount Rainier, and had thought how amazing it would be as a child to climb that mountain, but had never really thought that I could do it. When I was 16 years old, a friend of mine told me a story of being able to climb through RMI. And my reaction was, anybody can climb that mountain? So when I was 20 in college, I had a friend who had climbed before and invited me along, and that was it. I was hooked.
And you were hooked.
I was absolutely hooked.
One of your goals is to climb the top 100 peaks in Washington State. Is that correct?
The Bulger List.
The Bulger List. Where are you at so far?
55.
Okay.
Now, 55.
Okay. Are you going to be able to accomplish that 45 more, do you think?
I don't know.
What's next on your list of mountains to climb in the Bulger List?
So my goal, I have 45, and I don't have anything specific that I want to climb. What I'm hoping to do is maybe take a week this summer. There are some peaks that you can chain together, and a couple of them are 5 climb outings. So if I could get 1 or 2 of those this summer, 10 peaks, probably too much to ask for, but that would be great.
Now, I understand you climbed Mount Rainier last year. Is that right?
I climbed Mount Rainier 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
2 years ago. This photograph was not a climb. This was just a hike on Rainier.
Now, as I understand, the climb of Mount Rainier, it's either a 2 or a 3-day trip.
Typically,
is that correct?
Typically a 2-day. There are some 3 days.
What's the feeling like when you are close to the peak, you know you're going to make it successfully, and you step out on that peak and you look at that view and you take it all in? For someone who doesn't climb regularly, what is that feeling like? Can you describe that?
You know, I think it's best to start down below rather than up on top. When I look up at the peaks, they're pristine, gorgeous. They were created in such a way that you couldn't make them any better. You couldn't add to them. And there also is a little bit of mystery. Every time I climb a mountain, you never quite know what you're going to get in the climb. So when you are able to achieve through understanding how to make the climb, having the physical fitness to achieve it as well, and then get to the summit, you didn't get weathered off, there were no other things, it's quite a wonderful accomplishment. So there are days, not every day on a summit is like this, but there are days when the weather is perfect, you can lay in the sunshine and take in the view, and there's just nothing better than that.
I would imagine. Summed up very nicely. Another climb that you've made is the outer space route, and that's near Leavenworth.
Right.
Describe that.
So this is a rock. This is a rock climb. I have a friend who is a rock climber and has been trying to encourage me more in rock climbing. I've been rock climbing for years, but not on as serious of a level as this friend. And so he invited me to climb outer space. I thought it wouldn't be too hard, but I had the novice's ignorance. I had no idea how difficult it would be looking up at a climb that was straight up. And very good climbers would tell you, well, that's, it's a good climb. There are much harder climbs. But for a novice like me, it was extremely difficult.
What was the most difficult thing about this climb?
My friend decided that he would pass another route, another climbing party, and went off route. And he had climbed. I had to follow him, and could not see him, could not talk to him. And I was climbing up a crack that was full of leaves and dirt, and doing fairly well until I slipped. And then I had nothing but the rope. And
Were you dangling for a little bit?
I was dangling. And I tried to get up a couple more times, and then decided I'm going to run out of strength if I don't get myself up right now. And so I did what you're not supposed to do.
Which is?
I hung onto the rope and I pulled myself up. Now,
why aren't you supposed to do that?
Well, it's bad form, very bad form. You're supposed to be climbing, not assisted by the rope. But I just managed to get up and catch up with my partner, who wondered why I was taking so much time.
That probably requires a great deal of upper body strength, I would imagine. Something like that.
It required all I had.
It's one of the most popular routes in Leavenworth, and just has some spectacular views at the base of Snow Creek Wall, I believe is where you started.
It is on Snow Creek Wall.
Snow Creek Wall. You also made or you actually, I think, either biked a route in Moab.
Right.
In Utah. That is, if you haven't seen that out there, it is spectacular. The rocks, the sunset, the colors is absolutely amazing. How many times have you been to Moab?
So mountain biking is fairly new to me. Last year was my first trip to Moab. I'm hoping to go again this spring. And we camped for a week and rode 15 or 20 routes while we were there.
It's the rock formations are just supposed to be absolutely spectacular.
They are.
Was it one of the most spectacular views that you've seen?
Well, mountain biking, certainly.
Mountain biking?
Mountain biking. Probably the most spectacular views for me are the North Cascades when I've been climbing. But I do love Utah. I love the open sky and the dryness. I don't know if I could live there. But when you come from a Washington winter and sometimes cold, wet spring, getting to Moab in April is nice weather.
Very different scenery.
Yes.
Very different scenery. Any plans to climb Mount Everest? You know I have to ask that.
No. The cost of climbing Everest is almost prohibitive. Mm-hmm. And it is too crowded, in my opinion. If I were going to attempt another list, which would be the 7 summits, it would be a must-do on my list. But I enjoy the peaks in Washington State, and I'll probably just stick here for now.
All right. Well, Your Honor, it has been a pleasure having you here. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for another edition of 15 Minutes. We hope you'll join us again soon. Take care.